By now, you have likely heard that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny died in an Arctic Russian prison on February 16th. The circumstances are suspect because Navalny seemed fine the day before, and then suddenly the 47-year-old was not so fine. Throw in some suspicious bruising, and you are halfway to a full-blown conspiracy. Many are pointing the blame at the Kremlin, both for the underlying conditions of him being in a frozen prison, and also perhaps the more proximate cause of death, whatever that might be. Much of the media discussion has centered around deterrence and the consolidation of power in the shadow of Russia's presidential election, which is now less than 1 month away. I, too, find the timing to be curious, but not quite for the same reasons. Actually, this was decidedly poor timing for the Kremlin due to a couple of issues. And keep in mind that I am talking about this as a political scientist. I have no special knowledge of what might have actually happened to Navalny, or if this is some type of conspiracy. I also have zero medical insight into the cause of death. I have a doctorate, but I am not that kind of doctor. As such, what we are really doing here today is analyzing the consequences of Navalny's death. Okay, the first important point pertains to the incentives in autocratic elections. The standard conspiratorial take here is that Navalny was murdered to send a warning to potential opposition leaders. The presidential election begins on March 15th, and the Kremlin just wants a quiet week without any surprises, which they can then cap off with a celebration of Putin's clinching of an unprecedented 5th presidential term. If anyone was thinking about raising a fuss, well, don't, because then you are liable to receive the Navalny treatment. And now I have to go on the usual rant, because this is par for the course regarding political analysis. Step 1. Something interesting happens in the world. Step 2. Analysts drop in and inform people about the basic incentives regarding the situation. So far, so good. Step 3, though. Analysts assume that people involved in the situation on a day-to-day basis are not paying attention. Step 4. Analysts make ridiculous claims that anyone on the ground who is actually involved in these situations would laugh at. It is easy to consume these types of reports without a second thought, because the first 2 points are perfectly reasonable. Indeed, when I consume media, I am sure that I miss these issues all the time, because such arguments are all over the place, and they do not seem completely crazy if you are just looking at the surface. However, imagine finding an opposition leader on the streets of Moscow. You tell him, "Hey, did you hear Navalny died in prison? Your job is incredibly dangerous. Did you know that?" He might then respond, "Oh wow, I had no idea. Thank you for that incredibly brilliant insight. I was under the impression that this was easy. All expenses paid Siberian vacations seemed to be a perk of the job. Certainly, no one has ever died like this before. I must thank you for your brilliant insight once again. You truly have saved a life today. Now excuse me while I have a cup of tea next to a 10th floor window." Then scores of other Russians appeared seemingly from nowhere to applaud the analyst for his brilliant insight. Okay, let's depart from the world of r/that happened and head back to the real world. Analysts do contribute to policy-making decisions, but it is not by repeating basic facts that anyone involved in the situation is not intimately familiar with already. For example, things like the untimely deaths of Russian opposition who somehow are consistently reckless around windows, or things like planes falling out of the sky. It is harder to do things like statistical analysis, working through mathematical models, and, yes, every now and then, drawing some lines on maps. In sum, we are at the point where any opposition death has basically zero deterrent value on others thinking about becoming part of the opposition, or exerting their opinions more forcefully. Instead, the clear and present danger to the Kremlin is coordinating opposition. Remember, the Kremlin's goal is merely to have a quiet month of March. Even if you control the official tallies, Autocratic elections are dangerous because they can serve as a rallying call against the current regime. The thing is that protests are more dangerous for individuals when only a few people are participating. The more people there are on a street corner, though, the greater safety in numbers the protesters enjoy against security forces. Good luck to you if you are trying to stare down that many people at once. The upshot for the opposition is that a big news story like Navalny's death creates a meta-expectation regarding protests. I know that you are more likely to protest, which makes me more likely to protest, which makes you more likely to protest, which makes me more likely to protest. And suddenly, there is a mass of humanity openly defying the current regime until everything falls apart. At least from the outside, at the start of February, it appeared that the Kremlin was under no real pressure from Navalny, or the opposition candidates who were disqualified from March's ballot, or the weak/opposition-ish parties that are still eligible. No, the real March danger was people marching on the streets. Whatever caused Navalny's demise, his death itself has poured some lighter fluid on the situation. Now, that is a long way from Putin having any real concerns. But it would still have been a lot better for the Kremlin if this occurred in, say, April, and not in February. Indeed, makeshift memorials are popping up in Russia, and some low-level protests have begun in the wake of Navalny's death, with the corresponding crackdowns creating further hints of instability. But keep in mind that pouring lighter fluid means nothing if there is no spark to ignite it. Then you're just looking at flowers in front of a stone. Moreover, these side effects do not tell us who is responsible for what happened. Goodness knows that bureaucracies can cause all sorts of mismanagement headaches, including quite a few that have happened during this very war. It is just that the timing is far from ideal for the Kremlin. A separate reason why the timing is bad is because it has disrupted what would have otherwise been a favorable news cycle for Russia. The day after Navalny's death, Ukraine withdrew from Avdiivka, which, as we have discussed before, was the focal point of the ground campaign for the last few months, so much so that Zelensky took a trip there in December. Well, Russia's gamble paid off, giving the Kremlin its first major territorial gains since Bakhmut, and the only one since the first phase of the war that has not involved the Wagner Group. This dominated Western media headlines, causing those skeptical about the war to further rethink the value of sending aid to Ukraine. Except that is not at all what happened. Navalny continued to dominate the headlines, and it was not close. Take a look at the number of news articles published about both topics, and bear in mind that these data are from February 18th, when the Navalny story was already 2 days old, but Avdiivka was still fresh. The man was closer to Taylor Swift's numbers than the results of a major battle. Now, if the death was planned, you might think that Russia would not have known about the Avdiivka victory in advance, because it did happen the day after. Indeed, that is true to some degree. But the news was almost all positive for Russia there in the days before. So again, the timing is weird. In any case, there was hardly a victory lap. Instead, all of the headlines were about how Russia is bad at democracy, puts opposition leaders in jail, and then oversees their deaths. Meanwhile, unsurprisingly, the media pendulum swung far the other way in Russia, with all of the focus on Avdiivka and relative silence regarding Navalny. Just to be clear, even if you knew on the 16th that Avdiivka would happen on the 17th, assassinating Navalny and using Avdiivka as a distraction would still be a strange choice, because, again, April is better than February. In any case, the Western focus is interesting because, absent some sort of low-probability destabilizing election protest, the results in Avdiivka will have much greater consequences for the war. But that is a subject for us perhaps later this week. If you seek something to tide you over in the meantime, then I have exactly what you need. A couple of books on the strategy behind the conflict. Check the video description for more information on them. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care.